Okay, take two.
Yeah.
We have-
Solve that problem.
Get a mulligan on it?
Okay, shall we start over? Warrant Committee meeting is starting at 7:11. We have Stephen, Amanda, and Ed online. Everyone else is here, and Newton is absent. So, with that, have people had a chance to look at Newton's minutes?
I'm just gonna look on with you.
Okay,
I'm
sounds good.
kidding.
Did everyone have a chance to look at Newton's minutes from the last time?
Yeah.
Does anybody
Yeah.
have
Yes.
any questions or concerns with minutes or changes?
No.
Okay. Then, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
Jeremy? All right. Oh, okay. So, Stephen, I'll start with Ramon.
Yeah.
Okay, Amanda,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
I'll vote yes.
Yes.
Yes, Jamie?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Jill, yes. Okay, so the only agenda item that we have for tonight is to talk about the fall town meeting on the new elementary school and how we are going to attack that process. So I guess I'll just kind of recap what we had talked about last meeting, which was to have a subcommittee that is going to be Bob and Jill and Stephen and myself to conduct a bunch of one-on-one / group meetings with, we determined 5 groups that we think are, I don't know if you want to call them major stakeholders or information holders maybe, perhaps. And so we do have those scheduled. So over the next couple of weeks, we have meetings with the selectmen, which, Christine, do you know if all of them are attending that or if that's just going to be Mike?
No, I believe all of them are attending on the 25th.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so we're gonna meet with all the selectmen on the 25th. We are going to meet with, I think the name of their pack is for our kids, for our town. Is that Mike, Pastor's? Yeah, I wrote elementary school pack on the thing, but I think they have a real name, like for our kids, for our town, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
So we'll meet with them next Thursday, and then the following Monday will be the SBC. But it's not going to be the entire SBC. My understanding is it's probably going to be Mike Quinlan and Tim Buttifati. He had mentioned also having Jeff Marsden attend. I said that I didn't feel that Jeff Marsden needed to attend 2 of these, that one was probably enough. So I know that the school committee is coming, or at least a portion of the school committee will come and meet with us on September 8th. I know that Jeff was planning on attending that with Jess Riley. Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke said that she would attend one of them, since she's both on the SBC and the school committee. And then I have not had a chance to talk to Jess Riley directly about it because she was away on vacation when we scheduled, and Jeff Marston just committed to it, and they haven't tried to reschedule, so I assumed that it works. And then all of those are going to be at night at 7 o'clock, and then we are going to meet on the 9th of September in the morning with the Dale on Dale group, which will definitely consist of Jerry Potts and Chris McHugh Potts, and then anybody else that they were planning to bring, and so we'll kind of touch base. The format that I've told everyone that they didn't need to kind of create any kind of presentation, because I think that what we were doing was planning to have more of a conversation. I don't know if as a group we want to talk about how we want to do those, or if anybody has any specific ideas. If
To start the comments, I think that, the second part of the review by the Warrant Committee, we each all have specific groups we'll be talking to. So I think that the objective of these first meetings is really to to set ourselves to the main points that these major stakeholders have and any guidance they can give us. So as we go forward and towards an action by the Warrant Committee, that we'll have a good starting point, as a basis, and then I think it'll go from there. So I would agree that, each one of these groups has been certainly prominent, in the years leading up to this. So I think it's really just an opportunity for us on the Warrant Committee to get some clarity of questions we may have and give them, and maybe get some thoughts on, what their perspective is as well. Specifically, I guess, on our involvement, so that it's clarity as to what we're doing and why, for them, as well. So I think it's an opportunity to ask the questions too. What is it the Warrant Committee does, and what's its role, and what is our, ultimate objective for the November meeting? That's my sense.
Anybody else? Yeah, I think that sums it up very well, because my entire goal out of all of this is that, one, I want to make sure that when we all talk about all of this as a group, that none of us has any outstanding questions, and then hopefully in turn that would mean that the public doesn't have any unanswered questions, is really kind of where I'm trying to go with that. So in terms of those 5 meetings, I don't want everyone, clearly I'm not expecting anybody on the committee to go to any of those meetings other than those of us that committed ourselves to the crazy schedule. If everyone is welcome, though, I just want to state that. So anybody that wants to come, I think we're still working on exactly kind of where they're going to be and how they're going to be, because we would like to do them in this format, and we'll have a lot of practice now, so we'll make sure that we don't start it the way we did tonight.
Well, I'll leave my iPad at home, for example.
Okay.
And I won't swear.
I
into the
know,
mic.
we did a better job the first time.
I'm learning.
So then kind of going forward on the schedule, I don't know how many people tuned into the SBC meeting last night, but I did, and then at the end, and I know that Bob was there, at the end, Mike Quinlan did go through what he kind of foresaw as the schedule and what he foresaw that the town meeting was going to be, which is going to condense what I had made for a schedule by at least a couple of weeks. So the idea here, it's really going to condense everything pretty much into October, because he had said that his hope was that the town meeting would happen the first week of November, and I was kind of projecting this as more of like a November 15th kind of thing. His hope was more of a first week of November for the meeting, and then a second week of November for the vote. So it has not been scheduled yet, but with that in mind, we do have a meeting as all of us, I guess, to kind of talk about where we all stand and on our information gathering, and about all of the information that we have gathered or additional questions that have come up from the different subcommittee meetings. So we're doing that on Monday the 13th. Between then and the 28th, so we had already kind of pre-decided we were all going to meet on the 28th. That meeting on the 28th has now become a joint meeting with us, the selectmen, and the SBC in order to review the financials of the project. So we are only going to have in September one meeting that's just all of us. I think that's probably okay, given all the other meetings, and since we'll have that one on the 28th. But if anybody feels differently, let me know. We probably will need to end up doing a meeting maybe the following week, just to condense this. I had originally thought we would then have a couple more weeks in order to come up with, I guess it's, in my head, it's some kind of document with the answers to the questions or all the facts laid out. And so I guess I would say that probably as people start to go through their information and put it together, we're probably going to have that be more of a living document in order to go through that. Because if we're now shooting for a town meeting that's the first week of November, we're probably talking about, instead of the week of October 25th being a meeting to finalize everything, that's actually probably more where we would be doing some kind of warrant hearing and then voting either later that week or the week after. Because the entire intention here is to have our hearing before we vote. I guess with that,
Karen,
yeah,
can I ask a question?
Of course.
We were, I think we had met earlier last week, I think, with Bob and Newton, and one of the questions we had was that document. What do you envision that looking like? Is it because if we're all working towards, contributing to it, it'd be, I guess it'd be helpful to know kind of what your thoughts on that are in terms of what it would look like. Is it more of a Q&A type document, or is it just a narrative?
I think it's a Q&A type document in my head. I mean, if anybody else has any other thoughts on that. I mean, I think that I don't want it to be a narrative that includes any opinions.
Yeah.
I just want it to be, this was a question that was asked, these are the facts that we have that go towards the answer. And I guess, so to talk about just that for a second, so if you think about it, some of the questions people have, you have to interpretate numbers and make an opinion on that. So really, so if the question is one that is, so a lot of people say, well, what are the chances that if this fails that the MSBA isn't going to let us go forward? Well, nobody knows, you can't put odds on that, right? So the document can't have odds. But what the document could say is, okay, if you look through the records of MSBA, this is how the last 20 things went, and this was the outcome, interpreted on your own. Like that's how I would see it. So it's more of a Q&A. It shouldn't have any interpretation of the information. Just, it's more like access to the information. So I think in my head, it's like a PDF that has a question that we know that people want the answers to, and where we at least found where we found the answers. And so maybe that's just, maybe it's just a link to, this is the document that is posted X. It's almost like one-stop shopping.
I guess related to that,
Yeah.
again, document repository
Yeah.
or some place to have all of those other, documents by others,
Mm-hmm.
Aggregated. Is there a place for that, or will we want a place for that, or will we, like you
I
say,
think we
Sharon,
want a
just,
place.
reference another place?
Um,
Because we may actually get information from folks, outside of the school building committee, other committees, other groups.
I
that
totally
may not have
agree.
a platform to have this information kind of compiled.
Yeah. I guess
Yeah.
the question is, can we, Christine, put, so in that case, if somebody gives us a document that isn't necessarily, the SBC has their own website and they're putting up their different meeting materials, you could reference those things. But let's say, let's just say there's some documents, as an example, Chris has things that she's gotten from the MSBA and things like that. If she has them, they're not necessarily a place that could be linked to, but they were things that we wanted to provide. Can we just link those up as kind of almost like a meeting
I think you
packet
do a meeting
folder?
packet. You can do that on your website. We can create a page for you within the Warrant Committee site just on this project and this subcommittee, and you can put all the documents that you're reviewing on there.
That would
Yeah.
probably work, right? And so then we would just be kind of like a gathering scans.
Yeah.
And,
So then anybody could review what you've reviewed in all of your meetings.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that makes the most sense.
That does sound good.
Christine, is that while it's in working progress, like while we're offline, or is that the collection that we present within the meetings? Like, should we be I guess,
I mean, it seems like it would kind of build itself as we go through.
Yeah, I
these.
think you
And
would-
as
you
we get
wouldn't-
documents, we'd want to get them up there.
I don't think you would post it until after. I keep turning around to look at her, but you're not really there. I think you would post it after the meeting that you reviewed it. You would reviewed it.
Yeah,
At the
okay.
conclusion of your meeting. Let's be honest, Nick will post it the next morning.
Right, yeah, yeah.
I think that's how you would do it.
Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking, where if we've discussed it in this forum.
Yeah, I think you would discuss it first, then determine
Yeah.
whether or not you're posting it as part of your official review.
Okay.
Yep, okay.
But then I guess to your point, Jeremy, I would say like, so if there's stuff, so let's just say we have a meeting on the 13th. If there's stuff that people have all reviewed and submitted and we want to talk about on the 13th and we want to put the first group of stuff up there. I think the sooner the stuff is up there, the better, right?
Yeah, as we go.
So then that way we can do that. So I think then maybe the thought is that over the next, we've got 4 weeks till our next meeting. So if anybody has gathered things, we could use our time on the 13th, it's just us, to start to go through what people have put together. And then we could start to post that. And so then I guess back to your question, Steve, I mean, if we're gonna do that, then maybe it's not a document unless we have to put it in a document format. Or we just, in the end, we write out what questions we were trying to get answers and we put it to. I think it's gonna evolve.
Consolidate it. Yeah, that'd be easier.
Like, or and from that standpoint, maybe it's almost more of a table of contents versus a Q&A. I think we just see what we get.
And the objective would be to have these meetings between really the 1st of September and the 13th.
I think that as much as we probably can. Well, because if we do whatever people can do in the next month in order to be able to gather as much as we can, the better. And then we can, if we think we have even more that we want to do, we could talk about meeting a little while. We could make the meeting on the 28th a little bit longer and come earlier and meet just ourselves if there's things that people want to review before we do the joint meeting. And then we could post some more. We could do that. And so we could kind of take a temperature check before we get to the 28th if people want to add a half an hour, 45 minutes or something like that before the meeting on the 7th, that starts at 7. Because what I would like to do is, if we have to do that, then we could do maybe like worst case scenario, the last of what we're putting up there. And any discussion about how we want to organize going through it in the warrant hearing. Because my whole idea about the warrant hearing is really, it's almost to go through at a summary level what's available up there for people to go through. It's not to give our opinion at it, nor will we have voted at that time, but I want it to be, and there's gonna be so much information up there. It's not like you can go up there and read the whole document to everybody. It's more about these were the questions that we heard, this is where we think you can find some answers, and maybe each of us do that, maybe, and then it's, maybe not more than an hour. And then as always, we'll take questions, and just provide people where we think they can find the answers. And then we'll have one last meeting where we can all discuss and we'll vote.
Sharon,
Yeah,
can I ask a question?
of course you can. Ed.
When we met last time, I thought we were trying to gather the list of questions that were really outside the scope of responsibility from the building committee. For instance, what are we gonna do with the old Dale Street building? Because that really wasn't part of their scope of responsibility. And those are the questions we were going to try to address. As you look through the websites, so many of the common questions that people ask have already been answered. People just haven't researched it and gone into the website and found it. So am I correct in thinking we just want to try to gather all of those questions that the building committee isn't really responsible for answering and try to answer those?
I think it's two things. I think yes to that. Definitely the things that aren't answered, we want to get answered. And two, if there are questions that we're seeing people ask over and over again, then let's just repoint them in the direction of where it's been already posted, not trying to re-answer it.
Should we?
Yeah, and also, I would think, I'm assuming that there will be questions where we will not have answers to.
Right.
I'm going to comment a little bit differently, Ed, because we've talked about this, and I don't disagree with what your statement is, but you know, when the Warrant Committee makes its recommendation to either pass or dismiss the article, it's going to be based in a large part on what the recommendations of the school building committee has made, right? So while we're not gonna re-plow the field as such, there are questions on the judgment or decisions that have been made by the school building committee that we'll either have to accept or address when we make our judgment on whether to pass or dismiss. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, when they say, I mean, we're not necessarily gonna restructure what they say, but in the process of our reviews and analysis, won't we be saying, yeah, okay, it was based upon these decisions, this process, these values, and we've either acknowledged that we support that, or we say, okay, there's some questions that come up in it. You know, I mean,
Can I
it's tricky.
expand that a little bit? I almost view it as beyond the school building committee, but like the larger, like, all the additional impacts, like just the downstream, I guess. So beyond just what the school building committee puts forward, but really kind of understanding the entire picture and the impact to field over a long, like permanent building committee and things like that, and would inform kind of, at least where I would think of where I want to sit with respect to
I would agree with
the
that.
article.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, you're just talking specifically, like, the question of, we passed the article, what happens to Dale, is not in the purview of the school building
Right.
committee, but it's a question that the public voters want to know, right? So, so that's what I say, I would agree, as Ed was saying, you know, that, you know, I mean, a couple of terms that were used when I was, you know, meeting with Ed and Newton and Steve, one was kind of a due diligence review, you know, in terms of, they've come to the conclusion, can we follow the process and the analysis and logic that's led to their decision? Not to question it, but just to be able to follow it. And then as questions that do come up or have come up, you know, we should address them, I think. It's complicated.
It is. It's a little bit of a daunting task, but
Yeah,
in
well, it
theory,
is.
you're
It's-
asking every single voter in Medfield to go through this daunting test, so we might as well.
Well, I'm, you know,
First.
in a certain situation, we recognize that not everyone is gonna go through it, so, and we're
Right.
gonna make a recommendation, so.
Easier for them to
Yeah.
understand.
I think we just want to make
Kinda
it,
boil it down
Yeah.
as best as we can.
and, right, you know, if people are confused where to get it, then they need to be, you know, and, I mean, honestly, I think that, at some point in this process, like, so once we feel like we have all of the documents up there on the website, I do think that it's worth it for us to, you know, call the patch and whatever and just be like, it's up on this website. Like, we can't just post it on Concerned Citizens. Like, it has to go somewhere to everyone. Because, I mean, and it's not like, and there's gonna be a tremendous amount of pages to it, which is why I think it's a little bit of, you know, what you had done for us back in April, where you had said, you know, in this one document, I know it's 250 pages, but if you have a question about this one, the answer is on pages 10 to 20.
Yeah.
Like that kind of, just make it a little bit more, feel a little bit more accessible
Yeah.
for somebody who's just, you know, trying to do it on their own time.
And really, I think I mean, it's a big responsibility to the Warrant Committee, because the onus is on us to demonstrate that we've given sufficient consideration to the questions that have been raised, that it isn't a rubber stamp, and it's not, on either way, that we have to somehow be able to demonstrate what the considerations we have made to come to our conclusions. And in order to do that, we have to give as much consideration as we can to the questions that have been raised,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, to build on that, though, the Warrant Committee really isn't the champion of the projects. We're
Right.
not the proponent per se, but we're advising, we're making a recommendation to town meeting. And yeah, we need to be as thorough and as comfortable with that process as we can be, to add as much, value as we can to that recommendation.
Well, right, and I think, as of today's date, we don't know if we're gonna advise to pass or dismiss.
Right.
So, yeah, we're not proponents, we're the reporters.
Right.
For the jury.
I don't know, actually, I think, I like to consider, Scott, always gives his preamble and, before the town meeting, but he refers to us as a committee that presents facts to the legislature, which is the town population of voters, to make their decision. So our onus is on giving the best information we can to make an informed judgment and decision, and let the
Indeed.
votes fall where they are.
I agree.
So even if we give the recommendation to pass, we're still not advocates. We're just saying, based upon the facts, 9 of us, or whatever number of the 9 say, this is what, and then there's always a minority opinion if it, and we still have the blue tables.
And to add to that, Bob, I guess I've always viewed this committee as a bit independent from the executive branch, the selectmen and all the operations of the town government. So we have sort of almost a fiduciary type duty to sort of be independent, and call it like we think it should be.
Right.
Agree.
Does anybody have any other, I'd broken this down into whatever it is, like 8 topics. Does anybody think that we haven't covered anything that we need to, or do we feel good with it?
I'm good with it, Sharon. I was personally glad you did break it down into those topics, because it's a very complex analysis.
I tried to make it feel like you had a little sub-question.
Yeah, I think the topics are good.
Okay.
I think the process will be very fluid.
True.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the topic may come up that's
Yeah.
Right.
already captured in general by these that we want to expand on.
Yeah.
But
Well, and I think that that's part of what, when we have these meetings with the other groups, kind of like, we can share with what we feel like the topics are we're hearing, and then they can say, well, yeah, we're hearing that one a lot, but you missed this one, and then maybe we'll pick up another one as we go, which is why we wanted to try to do those meetings as early in the process as possible to give us some time. Okay.
yeah, thank you, Sharon, for putting some structure to this and having the topics and sort of the schedule laid out, I think.
Oh, you're
It's a good
welcome.
start.
I give a lot of credit to Bob because he had come up with all I did was put his
Who, me?
ideas into a chart.
She just blamed me. She just-
I didn't
in
blame
a way
you.
of passing, it was sort
I
of like,
didn't
it was
come
sort of
up
a
with,
nice.
like,
Mike
the
said
8.
something about all our meetings last night. He just slipped it in
Yeah,
there.
that's why they pay her the big bucks, because she knows how to do that. So.
Yeah, because I can put it in a chart. And fill up everybody's email boxes at 11 o'clock at night asking when they're free. But But,
Well, to that point, just to say, and I sent out last evening, the agenda from last evening's meeting. And because I thought it had some really, one of the items in the agenda was when they vote on the minutes. And I say they, because I don't vote in this thing, but when they vote on the minutes, the June 13th town meeting that was held, or the open forum that was held, which you provide the video, but it's the long video, but going through this when you get a chance, it's like 8 pages of documenting, but it shows so many questions that came up in that town meeting. And there was a town forum a couple of weeks ago as well. And each one of those, I think, are really helpful for background in going through the questions, because, it just raises, it just shows us what the questions are. So I think it's really a good document for reference.
Yeah, I agree. I thought I went through it. I was actually at that meeting, and I thought they did an outstanding job of capturing all of the questions, some of which I had forgotten got raised. So it was very good.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a great job. I listened, I read what you sent out, Bob, and they did answer all of those questions very well. Those are the common questions, and they've been answered.
Well, see, then it's gonna make our, if we already have some answers that we can just gather for people in the right place, and then we'll answer the ones that haven't been answered.
Right.
Yeah, and there may be some answers that, we will want to dig deeper into.
Right.
With either Mike or with Jeff or someone else, just to keep, but it's the topics, I think, as you said, are very valuable.
Yeah. Christine, how realistic do you think it is with Mike's guess to try to do it the first week of November? Should I condense my schedule on that assumption of his?
I would hold off until Scott and the Board of Selectmen can have that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so I guess at this point then, we'll do these meetings over the next couple of weeks. We'll all meet on the 13th, and I guess we'll shoot on the 13th for as much information as people have on their topics. That they want, if you have anything you want to send around in advance, then you can, and then we can review whatever we can on the 13th. And we'll talk again on the 13th about any additional questions that have come up out of all these subcommittee meetings that are happening between now and then. And then, how far out do people know their October schedules? Like, is it okay to send a doodle already out for October to try to figure that out, or is?
Yeah, that's okay with me.
Yeah. Does your, I know you get into little.
Right now, it looks okay, but Tuesdays will be tough in September, maybe October,
Okay.
but so that's like the only day right now that.
Okay. All right, well, so then maybe what I'll do is, I'll send out a doodle, probably tonight if I don't forget, just about October, just to start to try to figure that out. And then let's see how far we get on the 13th, and then we can discuss then whether or not we want to try to meet a little bit earlier on the 28th. And then maybe we at least back up the idea of having a warrant hearing back out of the week of November 1st, and at least move it back to the week of the 25th at a minimum.
I can tell you now, October 7th and 9th are kind of blocked out.
I know, 7th to 9th, for some reason, Bob thinks it's more important to be at his daughter's
We
wedding.
want to see tears. You want to see tears?
So
Don't go there with your tears with your freshman and high school college son. You want to see tears?
When we were looking at the schedule today, I said to Nick, wait, when is the Sliney wedding?
Yeah.
That's why there was actually nothing the week of the 4th, because we knew that we were gonna have Bob in I'm about to lose my daughter mode.
Yeah, I should be able to recover by the 11th or 12th. I'm a couple of days to recover, but I should be fine.
Before we take the vote.
Right, exactly. So, so let's just kind of see how that goes and maybe, yeah, I mean, I'd love to think that we could get all of the information by the end of September, but who knows how many questions we're gonna end up coming up with over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so a question about some of the, and it maybe being new, I'm not sure the source, but if we're gonna look at some of the stuff that's out of scope of the school building committee from a financial impact on the town, who's projecting those numbers? And is there someone we work with to do that? Is that a certain committee? Christine, okay. So if we wanna look at, like, I don't know if it was in, I have to go back and look if it was, you know, some of the traffic concerns, was that built into the project budget, or would that be something on the side of the town?
That's anything built in the project budget, you're gonna work with the school building committee on.
Sure. So it just-
Financial impacts are gonna come directly through us.
Okay, perfect, because I think that'll be the underlying question as we go through like each of these topics, is financially, what is it?
Right.
What's the overall impact?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
Great,
think,
apologies.
just to your point, you know, because you're coming on board, I think that's a key piece of what we do,
Yeah,
which is taking a specific item, article, issue, and putting it into the total context of the budget, the town finance position, you know, it's debt structure and all. So, yeah, because that's been one of the questions that's come up at some of these open sessions, you know, was that, okay, we're just gonna, you know, we're not gonna run this through. We will evaluate or, you know, study the analysis that's put together so we can see it in that context of risk, future projections and the like. So it's a
Yeah.
great question. It's exactly what we do, I think, in that context.
when we have big proposals like this coming up, do you guys do anything ahead of time, or is it kind of as the questions come up and they're prompted that we would kind of target those over to you and anyone else? Or do you guys consider any of the project proposals that are coming around into kind of a future look at town budget and?
Yes, particularly if it's in the capital budget or if it's in our plan for bonding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'll look at that.
Cool. Does anybody else have any other thoughts or questions or anything else you want to talk about while we're all here?
Yeah, just a little bit of I don't know who or people were able to tune in last evening to the SBC meeting, but if you have time, it would be worthwhile, because one of the items that was addressed was the beginning of the budget, the construction budget. And that's, you know, and the estimates of, you know, that will be leading to the final cost.
So was that in the packet you sent out last night?
No, because that was prior to the meeting. So you know,
Okay.
it was a topic in the package I sent out, but the information.
I did tune in and I had a hard time reading the slides, so do we know where we can get the?
Yeah, I'll follow up on that.
I've seen it on other venues, maybe, a spreadsheet, but I'm not sure if it's the official.
Well, it's not official yet because
was
the
still in
estimate
draft
the
form,
estimate
but-
that came through, you know, Mike Quinlan was on vacation, so he hasn't been able to get to the final numbers yet. What they provided was kind of the current range, okay, of cost. And the purpose of that for last night's meeting was they have to submit to, as I understand, they have to submit to the MSBA an OPM, the project manager's estimate of a not-to-exceed number, okay? So that not-to-exceed number is a placeholder, which is just what it says. If the MSBA, prior to the final approval of the budget that'll be submitted in September 8th, I believe it is, it can't be, they won't entertain any number higher than that, okay? So if they came in later and said, well, it's gonna be 85 million, they say, well, you said 81. the issue, I think, to be cognizant of is that what they provided last evening was an estimate of construction costs and total project costs that was in a range of 77 to 81. 81, 82 million.
That total cost?
Yeah, it's total cost. And that, includes the million that's already been appropriated, et cetera. But they also provided an analysis with just a couple of spreadsheets on the estimated reimbursement expected. And that was 18 to 19 million, okay? So.
Isn't that percentage though, Bob? It's like the 13% or something of
It is,
the-
yeah, they went through it and they talked about the fact that kind of the percent that you could get, but then there's certain pieces that they can't get the full percentage of because there were certain rooms, like the gymnasium's a little bit bigger than the max that they'll do, so there was square footage and stuff. There actually was, I definitely would recommend people watching it too, because there was a very good discussion about it, because Mike Marcucci asked a lot of good questions, I thought, where he was asking about, well, but what if we wanted to, say, knock $10 million off of the price, what do we lose? And then they talked about what they can and they can't, and
Yeah.
how, and what things would shave off certain prices and stuff like that. So it was a good conversation.
Is there,
Yeah,
so there's a link to that meeting on?
We can
the-
definitely get it. They definitely
Okay.
recorded it. It was
Yeah.
last night, so.
Oh, it definitely was recorded, but I was unable to make.
No, it's definitely recorded.
was definitely
And I'll make
recorded.
sure I find out how you get it, access to it, because
It's already been posted, I heard from somebody.
Oh, we'll see. It's
Good.
already
Yeah.
posted.
Excellent.
To Sharon, to Sharon's point, I think that it's really important for us, I think, as we go forward, that we understand that there is a push to get these numbers out quickly and get people to look at them, but they're not final. And, Mike, there was a couple of points, that they've already reduced some of the square footage. They've made some, what they call is it engineering?
Value adjustments, I think.
Yeah, so, some adjustments, and there were 3 categories, so there's still a middle category that's being reviewed. There's some we can take that and don't worry about it. There's some that we might be able to take, but it has some consequences, and there's some changes we'd make that wouldn't fit into the scope. So, but there is some still available. Probably the biggest number that's in the range that's being discussed is our contingencies. Because some of it is operating contingencies and some is construction. And as Mike said, when he looked at the numbers, kind of the quick passage, he said, those numbers are too high because our risk is, for this particular site, is low. He says it's a flat surface, it's just, some of the things that he knows from his experience. So, again, the numbers are not final, and if and to your second point, Sharon, there was a great conversation, I thought, that Mike Marcucci raised questions of, okay, well, what if we have to take $5 million out?
Yeah, no,
You
I
know.
thought he asked a lot of
And
really
he
good
started it
questions,
with
yeah.
the term of, in the range of.
Yes, he did talk about the Taj Mahal, yeah.
Range of tent to Taj Mahal, where do we stand? But as only Marcucci can do, he nailed it, but.
And he wasn't in his closet. He was
yeah.
actually in his
He was
office.
actually in the office with the window, I know.
He's come out of the closet.
Bob, in that range of the 70 to 81 million, did they account for because the cost of construction is so high now during this COVID and, materials and stuff? I'm sure that.
Well, again,
did
those
they
are
talk
those are
about
questions that will be
factor
asked, because I think, one of the groups is Ed and Steve and Newton talking about some of the construction costs.
Yeah.
But, yeah, characterized as, some of it has contingencies in it, and some of it has inflation factors. So, yes, to that question. So, and in the question of the tent to Taj Mahal, Mike Quinlan gave references to 5 other towns, because that's his business, that he's working on. He used Ashland, Westwood, Walpole, Wellesley, and Norwood, and said, in that range of those 5 towns, we would be somewhat on the median, maybe skewed a little bit to the conservative. So it's not a Taj Mahal and it's not a tent, but it's not, it's someplace, and he says relative to some other towns, you know, we're pretty close.
I'm so glad that you said that he asked whether or not it was a range of a tent to a Taj Mahal, because all of a sudden the answers were talking about tents and Taj Mahals, and I kind of I missed that reference in his question, and I was like, how did we get to Taj Mahal's tent?
So he, so he
Clearly
did,
I was distracted
they did a
by
good
his
job there. And the other point that I think is useful to listen to is, and it fits into one of the other groups here, which is the MSBA process. Because the MSBA process will dictate the square footage per classroom per student.
Right.
So and then they will reimburse up to, I think I'm gonna use the number, but it's like a factor, maybe a 1.5 factor.
I think it was 1.5 for the
Eight
hallways and the
Yeah, for
maintenance
what they
spaces.
call operational space, right? So when you get right down to it, the property of the proposed location exceeds the reimbursement quotas basically by about 3% because of the gym, the stage, and the music
A music room.
rooms. Those are outside the guidelines of allowable space.
They made them larger than the
So,
max.
and the question would be, you know, what's the cost of that? And it's, you know,
So are they, someone analyzing the cost, or is it?
so they will, yes, and they'll be able to say that, you know, if you want to have the band program in the elementary school
And do you want
and
the
provide
stage
the
to be bigger?
space, then it'll cost
X amount of
an
dollars.
X amount unreimbursed.
Did they ever look at the impact of project costs if they scaled to the right, you know, whatever the recommended size is for those
I think
spaces?
that was one of the questions he was
Yeah, it's one of
asking.
the questions they were talking about last time.
Oh, okay.
But
They
this-
haven't gotten to that point.
I think they didn't have an answer for it yet.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think that was one of Mike's questions, was basically, well, how much do we save if we put
If
them
we
all back
just
to
kinda-
if we
yeah.
just go back to standard?
Yeah.
How much do we do? And I think Mike Quinlan's answer was, I was on vacation, I haven't read it
Okay.
hard enough to be able to give you that answer.
Just curious.
But I'm sure they can get us, they have to be able to get you that answer,
Mhm.
right?
I think they said it was 3%.
The square footage was,
The 3% square footage, yeah, so
Right.
you take,
I
so
suppose you could
it's
take what the price per
89,000 square
square
feet
feet.
right now is around what it is. And it's about 3% of that is not reimbursable because of these
Oh, gotcha.
The 3
larger
areas or
spaces.
whatever.
Is that what you're asking? I
like,
think
you
that
could
was it.
probably, I suppose you could roughly take whatever the price per square foot and minus it, but
Yeah.
for me, it's like, if you're gonna make a stage smaller, like, that's not necessarily there's probably a specific number for that.
I had a couple questions. One, Bob, you said was it 89,000 or 98,000 square feet?
It's not 98 any longer.
I think it's
Oh,
89.
It's gone down to 89, okay. And then the other question is, you said these are
And
not.
don't quote me
fine-
exactly, because these are still,
that-
but this was
these-
kind of in the
they're-
conversation last night, yeah.
That there's that they have to submit to MSBA a not to exceed amount.
Correct.
And then what point, so we can always go lower than that, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
and at what point do they become final? Sort of the timing wise.
They become final, I believe, on September 8th.
Yeah.
They submitted on September 8th, and the not to exceed, so, I mean, like someone in the committee said, well, why not just say 90 million? And, because the MSBA says, well, they'll question that. So there's some documentation that says kind of the worst case scenario, the number was 82 million. So and Mike said it's not gonna be 82, but we have to be able to justify our not to exceed, so that's where 81 was. But he said 81 is too high. It's not the number that it'll come down. So we don't want anybody to, stake a peg in a not to exceed number and say, oh my goodness, it's gonna cost us more than anybody said it was gonna do. Because it's really coming down to, pretty consistent with numbers that have been shown before, which were in the new Wheelock site in the question and answer was, for the 4-5, was 72 to 76 million. And the construction estimates for the new was 58 to 61, but the construction number in the estimate last evening was 65. And I think that 65 is reflecting the inflation.
Yeah,
and
construction costs and
construction
stuff.
costs and trying to be conservative, so, but still close to that range of that 76, but it's not final. And again, I don't want to say too much,
So
but
they will be going over these or finding them, and then by the 8th of September, they will have to have a final number to submit to, once it goes to the MSBA and the 8th or whatever that day is, it's sort of final at that point.
well,
Yeah,
it is final at that point. And then following that, because that's what they're gonna go to the MSBA and say, this is the cost which we're gonna bring forward to the town in our vote. And I think just the last point on that is that the school building committee is planning a public forum after the 8th to go through the detail of the number.
Right, and that was one of the reasons why we're meeting with SBC as a subcommittee later in the process, because Mike wanted to have more time with the numbers. So he had more time with the numbers, but before he submitted them when he met with us. So that's why they're on the 30th. So, yeah, because then I think that, so we're meeting with them on the 30th, and I think that their meeting is on the 1st.
I think they'll have the public meeting on the 1st for the submission on the 8th. So the 30th, when we meet with them on the 30th, they should have this
Right, he's gonna have it pretty buttoned
locked
up.
down.
Yeah, when we meet with him
Buttoned
on
up,
on the 30th. So we can definitely, even though I told people not to give us presentations, we could definitely see what he's got that he can give us. Because that was because he had said when we were picking a date that one of the reasons why he wanted to was because he wants to go through the numbers, and then he plans to sit with Christine and her team to go through all of the numbers and stuff too. So he was hoping that by the time we met on the 30th, he would have had those meetings and be able to have a better conversation with us at that
And
time.
their project cost doesn't include any future operating.
I don't believe it does. No, yeah, the future, and I think that's,
No, that's certainly an outstanding question.
Yeah, I
Needs
mean,
to
I
be
would want to
answered.
know that for,
The operating costs of the new building.
And certainly,
yeah.
what's the impact to the school budget or facilities budget or
Right.
utilities budget, whatever it may be.
Although I would assume and hope that any new school would be more efficient than what we're currently operating now.
Yeah, you would hope, right? Yeah, you would hope.
True, but
So-
square footage, if it's more
It
square
might be
footage, I mean,
larger,
that can
yeah.
vary. but,
Yeah,
Or field
but I would-
You know,
space.
hopefully it's
I
more
would-
efficient.
yeah.
But to maintain it,
Yeah.
is there other maintenance needs that?
Yeah, but there is
Operating budget.
furniture and technology in that number.
yeah, and that's probably more significant. And is that part of their scope of,
Yeah, well, yeah, because
I
it's
mean,
in,
those
it's in
expenses
their,
is
it's in their total budget, it's in
yeah,
there.
the budget
that
will
number.
include all
It
of
will.
the equipment.
okay,
Or everything that's needed inside the school.
And it's a
And-
good
and
question to
operating.
ask in the
But
context.
as
Not
far as the op-
operating,
No.
just the capital.
The operating
Okay.
though should,
where would that?
that would be helpful to know, so what we're in for, that's an
Yeah.
additive cost to
Yes.
the community
Yeah,
over the coming years.
Yeah, I have that in one of my groups, financial review of construction costs, future operating costs, bond issue costs, so I think that
okay, great.
that's in one of the
That's
groups.
right, okay. Be good to
Um,
have that.
Yeah, and part of
As we're
that too
reviewing
is
the
the.
numbers.
Right,
Is-
yes,
is-
and that might be one of the things that maybe, Ed and Stephen Newton, when they're working on that, that might be something extrapolating out from being able to talk to Christine and Nick and what buildings would be and maybe that's a conversation to bring Amy into, to say
Yeah.
like, you know, if we were gonna say, if you wanna take a new building to compare and how it was, like, so if you take the public safety building and the square footage and how it's gonna be used, you might be able to extrapolate out at least something into a decent range
Yeah,
to get an idea.
yeah, definitely.
And I
So,
think
mean,
in
there's
that,
certainly
in-
different iterations and components to that as well. You get the new building, wherever that may be,
Mhm.
and if it's at one location, there's an existing building as well that
Mhm.
still needs to be maintained.
Right,
So there's that
Yeah.
cost as well.
right.
when, and the zero energy.
Which that might show up, you know, farther in a.
Well,
projection.
part of it will, but part of it is also the, you know, if the solar program is sold or
Yeah.
leased, you know, it will have effect on the overall cost.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, that's part of the operating cost, all right, is the energy
Which
cost.
solar component, solar at the new
Yeah.
site of the school?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
They have is it what is it called, hydro? I don't know.
I don't know.
I get a headache trying to figure it out, but it's,
It's
it's
a lot, a lot
it's
to
an
it.
important, it's an important piece.
Geothermal, I think is.
Geothermal,
Oh,
see?
geothermal.
Heat pumps, yeah.
I'm
okay.
glad
Yeah.
Scott picked some smart guys to come in this program.
So there's one question / comment in here from Chris McHugh Potts that says, the building was listed at 95,828 square feet in the budget doc last night, so
Oh, so it is.
I will have to see that just because I couldn't read it on the screen, so we'll get a copy of that. And then it says, after September 8th submission to MSBA, Dale SBC will receive comments and feedback from MSBA, and our numbers could be readjusted once again prior to MSBA board vote in October.
Oh, that's
I
right.
do remember them mentioning the
Yes.
October, I don't remember what the date. And then she suggests that someone from the Warrant Committee should attend the MSB Project Scope and Budget Conference when it's scheduled. Chris, do you have any idea when that's scheduled?
I don't think it's scheduled yet.
It isn't?
It won't be scheduled until after the submission. I don't think we have a date yet.
Okay. All right. Well, if anybody's free, I think that's probably a good idea too.
Mhm.
Okay. Does, anybody else have any other kind of comments, questions, concerns, or do we feel like we have a plan? Okay. All right, well then, if you are so inclined and want to come to any of the subcommittee meetings, feel free.
Will it be hybrid?
That is the intent.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
They're going to
Christine
be
was
hybrid.
working on that.
So will they be here?
Sharon and I had a great exchange this week. We were both arguing with each other, and we had the
And we had the same opinion, but
opinion.
we were both too like fed up in our text because I decided to bring it up when I had just gone back from vacation and I had 414 unread messages. And I'm like, I don't care what you say. This is going to be hybrid and it's going to be recorded.
And I was
And
like,
don't tell me you can't do that. She's like, I am saying you can.
I am
We're on the same
saying,
page.
I am saying exactly that.
This
But
is
keep
a,
yelling at me.
Turn the caps on.
No, and it is not you.
this has been the last 2 months of my life discussing with my wife the wedding. So, you know, I totally can relate to
I'm
that.
on Team Molly, so don't go
Yeah,
there.
don't worry, believe me. I'm totally in agreement and I still get arguments
Oh my god.
because I have no opinion. I
Well, yes,
understand
because I
that.
didn't. Well, because I noticed because when Nick sent out the invites today, they didn't have locations yet. I think they all said TBD.
Because
You're working on that.
we're working on it. So we have a piece of equipment because Medfield TV and Audrey is so great about doing this, but we can't have them out 2-3 nighs a
And
week.
I told them I have a degree. This was in my.
This-
I have a degree in television
Yeah.
production. I can do it myself.
I will forward them all to you.
It's public record.
Um,
We were using her email address, and I was yelling.
It's you yelling. I was like, I know, I agree. Anyway, we bought a piece of equipment to allow some of our smaller meetings to be able to do hybrid without having to bring Medfield TV out. So
Oh, that's
we
great.
tested it today, we're gonna test it again, and
Can that
so
be used at different locales?
it can be used at different locations, no matter
Well, I
what.
was offering up alternative locations that I thought that I could.
I disagree with.
Well, first of all, I did offer up my conference room, and she said that wasn't as good as a public meeting. And I said, well, listen, I can do it in the warrant room, and I will uninstall equipment from my office, and I will drive it over. This is where this went.
Literally what she said.
That was angry typing. So, we did. Are they going to
So
be?
you are hybrid.
It's going to be great.
Your
It's gonna
room
be
is to be determined based on our OWL equipment,
great. Okay.
and we will get back to you on location. But you are definitely hybrid, definitely recorded.
Okay.
There you go.
That's good.
All right.
Good to know.
And so we will update the invitations
Once we have a location.
once we have them.
Yep.
Okay. And then we won't have to have any more angry emails with each other when we're talking about the same thing. Okay. All right. So on that note, all right. Well, so if anybody doesn't have anything else, then those of you that wish to attend our conversation with Mike and Pete and Gus, that's on Wednesday, here or someplace else, but not my office conference room, since that was not deemed good enough public space.
That one I will tell you will definitely be in this room.
Okay. All right.
All right, we'll plan for that.
So the
And,
25th will
and Jeremy, you and I will get together and talk about a convenient date to go through that water sewer stuff.
Sounds great.
Okay. All right. Do you want to make a motion, Bob?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Alrighty then.
Second.
Okay, there are seconds. All right, so I'll do the online first. So, Steve,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
I am also yes.
Yes.
Christine, Jeremy,
Yes.
Jill.
Yes.
All right. Well, then we are adjourned. And nobody turned their mics on in the process so that nobody gets screamed at. And it's over.